Dusk settled softly over the forest town, where the last light of day slipped through damp leaves, casting a golden haze on the wildflowers below. A small garden had been dressed for celebration, string lights drifting overhead like stardust, white tables scattered across the grass, and the air carrying hints of mint, rain-soaked wood, and lavender. In the center of it all stood Eva Callan, alone on a small wooden stage, holding the microphone with both hands like it was the only thing steady in her world. Her pale blue dress brushed lightly against her ankles, her shoes still muddied from the morning rain, and her heart felt like it might break from the inside out. It was the first time she had ever sung for a crowd this large, but she had made a promise to Marin, her dearest friend, who was about to walk down the aisle, and today was not a day for breaking promises. The piano began, a tender, wistful melody that seemed to echo from someplace far away. Eva closed her eyes for a moment, then began to sing. Her voice wavered, but there was something raw in it, something unpolished but deeply real. It reached the edges of the garden like a soft breeze, quieting everything it touched. At the back, Miles Wren sat alone, bourbon in hand, untouched. He didn't know who she was, didn't know her name, her story, but the way her voice cracked, barely at the highest note, not from mistake, but from something deeper, held him completely. It stripped the world bare for just a moment. It wasn't a performance, it was a confession, and he couldn't look away. The applause still echoed when Eva stepped down from the stage. She smiled, but her heart was still pounding. Her arms and legs trembled, as if she had just escaped a storm only she knew how to survive. Behind the stage, beneath the dim light spilling from the reception tent, a soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "You made the whole garden go silent, you know." Leela, the groom's cousin with curly hair and warm eyes, walked up and handed Eva a water bottle. The bride cried, twice. "I think you just stole at least half the guests' hearts." Eva let out a shy laugh. "I was shaking so badly I almost dropped the mic." "No one could tell," Lila said with a wink. "But there was one guy who looked like he couldn't take his eyes off you. He was sitting near the back, brown hair, gray suit. He looked like he'd just seen something he couldn't quite believe was real." Eva rolled her eyes, half joking, half deflecting. Maybe he was just thinking about the wedding wine. But later, when she returned to the reception, amid laughter, warm golden lights, and tables overflowing with flowers and food, her eyes wandered across the room almost without thinking, as if a small part of her was searching for something she hadn't quite named yet. And there, at the far edge of the garden near the last row of string lights, Miles Wren was still sitting, quiet, his bourbon still untouched. And in his mind, Eva's voice hadn't faded. It lingered, like the echo of something that hadn't yet begun, but already refused to end. 4 days after the wedding, Eva was rearranging books on a shelf at the cafe when the doors swung open and the bell chimed softly. A man in a dark suit, elegant but understated, stepped forward. "Eva Callan?" he asked. She looked up, surprised. "Yes, that's me." He handed her a navy blue card edged in silver. "I'm Julian, assistant to Mr. Miles Wren. He asked me to deliver a message. He hasn't stopped thinking about your voice, and he'd like to hear it in person." Eva blinked. "I'm sorry, who?" "Mr. Wren. He attended the wedding last weekend. He heard you sing." She gave a nervous laugh. "This is a joke, right?" "It's not," Julian replied, calm and respectful. "He'd like to meet you, properly." That evening, Eva stepped into a rooftop restaurant high above the city. Candlelight danced across glass and linen. She'd never been greeted by name at a place like this, never seen the skyline from this height. Miles Wren was already there. No tie, sleeves rolled neatly, but his eyes were focused, like she was the only reason the room existed. "Eva," he stood, extending his hand, "thank you for coming." Dinner unfolded slowly, awkward at first. White linen napkins, wine she couldn't pronounce, and the man whose gaze had made her tremble days earlier. But then, he started asking, not intrusively, not too close, just genuinely. Where did she come from? What had she once dreamed? And why had she stopped? Eva spoke, cautiously, about music, about nights rehearsing under a low ceiling, about how dreams don't vanish, they just get buried under bills and bad timing. Miles listened without interruption, without opinion, and, when she finally paused, he said softly, "You weren't just singing. you were saying something most people have forgotten how to say." 1 week later, Eva visited Miles's apartment at his invitation, unsure what she was expecting, only that her heart beat faster than usual as the elevator opened directly into the penthouse. The door slid open and the world went still. Not because of luxury, but because of quiet. The space felt like it had been built from light and thought. Floor-to-ceiling windows opened to a city slipping into evening, and every detail inside was deliberate, silent, intentional. "Thought we'd eat in tonight," Miles said without turning, his sleeves rolled as he stood in the open kitchen. "Had the chef prepare something light?" Eva nodded, clutching her bag a little too tightly. "I hope you're not expecting me to be impressed by the view," she offered, trying to ease her nerves. He smiled as he turned. "I'm more impressed that the piano doesn't have a speck of dust. That's suspicious." He tilted his head toward it. "A glossy black grand. Come see." She walked slowly toward it, her footsteps quiet against the polished wood floor. Miles sat at the bench like it was second nature, hands relaxed above the keys. Then, he began to play. The melody from the wedding floated out. Not perfect, a few notes slightly off, but with no apology. It was gentle, aching, familiar. It caught in her throat. "That's the song I sang," she whispered. "I know," he replied, eyes still on the keys. "It's been stuck in my head, so I looked it up, learned it." Eva had no response. No one had ever learned a song for her, especially not someone like Miles Wren. When he stopped, the silence that followed didn't feel awkward. It felt significant. Something between them had shifted, and neither of them could ignore it now. A few days later, Eva was invited to Miles's office. An upper floor of a glass tower, the city unfurling outside like an unfinished blueprint. She had never stepped into a space like this before. Everything was intentional. Minimalist art, a long wooden table, and behind his desk, a wall of windows soaking in natural light. Miles was already waiting, hands in his pockets, like he'd known exactly when she would arrive. "I wanted you to see this," he said, and handed her a slim folder. Inside were photographs, music classes, tiny violins, handwritten letters in crayon from children saying, "Thank you for helping me hear music." "The Wren Initiative," Miles said. "I started it 6 years ago, not for press, not for praise, but because I know what it feels like to lose music when life gets in the way." Eva turned each page slowly, fingers trembling just a bit. "What do you want me to do with all of this?" He looked at her, no pressure in his gaze, only belief. "I want you to help build the next chapter, design programs, shape ideas. You understand music in a way my team doesn't. You need it, like I do." She went quiet, overwhelmed. It was too much, too real. "I'm not qualified for this." "You're perfect for it." Eva looked up, hesitant. "If I say yes, this changes everything between us." Miles stepped closer, voice calm. "It already has, Eva." Eva said yes. Not because of the salary, though it was generous enough to make her read the offer 3 times. Not because of the brand new laptop that arrived at her door the next day, but because, for the first time in a long time, she woke up knowing she was doing something that mattered. Miles didn't hover. He wasn't the micromanaging type, but he had this uncanny instinct, always knowing when to check in, when to pull back, when to ask the kind of question that pushed her just a little further. After a month, they found their rhythm. It wasn't spoken, but it was there, in meetings, in proposals, in the quiet way their eyes would find each other across the room. Then one evening, as Eva was finishing a proposal for a new community music program in Queens, she received an email from an unfamiliar address. Someone had recorded her wedding performance and posted it online. The video had quietly gone viral, and now a record label wanted to meet her. Eva stared at the screen, frozen. When she told Miles, he didn't look surprised. "I saw the video the night it went up," he said gently. "It already has over 200,000 views. And you didn't say anything. Because this has to be yours, not mine. I didn't want to influence your choice. But what if I fail?" Miles stepped closer, gently touching her cheek. "Then I'll be the one clapping the loudest when you try again." On a rainy Friday evening, Miles showed up at Eva's office door, unannounced. "There's something I want to show you," he said, coat in hand. "I'm in jeans and a sweater," she replied, glancing down. "Perfect," he smiled. They drove to a quiet street in the Arts District, where a tiny gallery nestled between a flower shop and a wine bar. When they stepped inside, it was empty, except for an older man adjusting the lighting in the back. Miles greeted him with a nod, then led Eva to the center of the room. Before them stood a painting nearly 7 feet tall, framed in dark wood. A woman stood at the edge of a stormy shoreline, hair wild, eyes closed, mouth open as if singing into the wind. The colors were bold but not harsh. Somehow it all felt alive. "She reminded me of you," Miles said softly. Eva couldn't speak. She couldn't take her eyes off the canvas, as if some part of her had been painted without her knowing. "The artist's name is Varela," Miles continued. "He paints from feeling, not from models. I commissioned this 3 weeks after the wedding." She turned to him, stunned. "You didn't even really know me." "I knew enough to want the rest," he replied, gently. She whispered, "You're making it really hard to keep this simple." "I've never cared for simple." 2 weeks after the gallery night, Miles brought Eva to a place she'd never been. A small room perched at the top of a building he owned. The door opened to a space wrapped in glass, the city lights spilling in, soft as mist. In the center stood a piano, silent, solitary, and breathtaking. "I bought this building 3 years ago," Miles said, closing the door behind them. "I left this room untouched. Back then, I didn't know why." Eva stepped toward the piano, her fingers brushing its smooth black surface. "Maybe you did," she whispered. From his jacket, Miles pulled a small velvet box. He didn't open it right away, just stood there, still and honest. "I've spent most of my life trying to control everything," he said. "My work, my image, my feelings. And then you walked in and sang a song no one asked for, and I didn't want to plan my feelings anymore." He opened the box. Inside was a simple emerald-cut ring. Nothing extravagant, just clean, clear. Like her. "I don't want to watch your life from the sidelines," Miles said. "I want to write every note with you." Eva smiled. No tears, no dramatic gasp, just reached out, took the ring, and slipped it onto her finger herself. "Yes," she whispered, "not just to you, but to everything we haven't written yet." And they didn't throw a grand wedding. No hundreds of guests, no extravagant stage or fireworks. Just a still afternoon in the backyard of a weathered 2-story home on the city's edge, where a small circle of loved ones stood hand in hand, eyes glistening. Eva wore a simple white dress, a bouquet of lavender in her arms, and Miles couldn't stop looking at her like the world had just begun again. They exchanged vows not with lofty poetry, but with quiet eyes that had already seen every wound, every hope, and still chose each other. Later, in their sunlit kitchen, Eva stood barefoot at the sink, washing dishes. Miles quietly arranged mismatched porcelain plates they'd found at a thrift store. Jazz hummed through the air, mingling with the scent of fresh toast and coffee. They didn't need anything grand, just this, a home, a partner, and the feeling that, finally, they had arrived. They didn't live happily ever after, not in the storybook way. There were tired days, sleepless nights, and quiet moments when neither knew what to say. But through all of it, they kept choosing each other. Every single day. Miles never asked Eva to give up her music for something more stable, and Eva never made Miles feel like he had to become someone else to deserve her love. The little 2-story house with bougainvillea blooming at the windows slowly became a true home. They bought a dining table too big for just the two of them, for the loud dinners life might give us someday. Eva grew mint by the kitchen window. Miles programmed her favorite song into the doorbell. The attic studio wasn't for success. It was for honesty. There, Eva poured her fears, her unfinished dreams, her quiet hopes into music. She recorded songs not to be famous, but to heal others and herself. Her debut album didn't go viral, but it found its way to the girl crying in her parked car, the man sitting alone in a kitchen full of memories, the boy in a quiet town who dared to dream of piano for the first time. Every time Eva performed, whether in a small hall or just their living room, Miles was always the first to arrive, sitting in the front row, never looking away. And when the night settled in, after the music had faded and it was just the two of them in the stillness of their home, Eva would turn, rest her head on his shoulder and whisper, "Where are we in the song now?" Miles would smile, press a kiss to her temple, and say, "Right here, in the part that lasts."